Good evening, everybody. It is Wednesday night, October the 6th. I am Virginia Amos, and this is the Virginia Amos Show. I hope many of you were with us in May when we interviewed all of the Democratic candidates for City Council. It was, it was a lively 10 days with a wide cast of characters. And we promised at that time that we would be back in the fall to talk to those individuals who were running either as independents or as for the Republican Party for those same council seats. So true to our word, we are back tonight with Annetta Catchings, who is running for mayor. Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Good. Well, welcome. We're delighted to have you.
Thank you.
We're delighted
Thank
to
you.
have
It's
you.
catchy.
Catchy.
Catchings.
Catchy.
It's catchy.
Okay. Yes, it is. And I love the name Annetta. It's very soft.
Thank
It's very
you.
soft.
I think it's Swedish.
Is it?
The only other person I've ever met with that name was at a tennis tournament that my son was playing in, and she was from Sweden. Yeah.
Interesting.
Annetta.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that's one thing we didn't know. One of the things that we did with all of the council members in May, we made it a point to ask everyone the same set of questions. And that is a really great idea, except I have lost those questions.
Okay.
So I've tried to reconstruct some of them from memory. But we're going to start off with a few softballs, and then we'll start diving into some other stuff.
Yeah.
Right? So this just makes it easy and lets people know a little bit more about you. So aside from your name being Swedish, what is something that most people do not know about you?
Most people, people know that I love tennis and I love politics. That they know. I don't think that people know that I went to culinary school for about 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah, I started out in California, Costa Mesa Community College.
Yeah.
So I always find something to do to occupy my time other than flying and being a mom and at the time being a wife. So I thought, I was a party planner in D.C. and I saw how much money caterers were making. So I was like, I can do this. I can cater, plan the event, and but I need to know how to cook so that I can manage it. So that was my thinking at the time. So yeah, I went to culinary school.
Okay.
I started there and came here and went to Stratford.
Good.
Out by Tyson's Corner. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's good to know.
Yeah.
What music gets you up on the dance floor?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Well, I don't know how to twerk, so I can't say rap. It would have to be something fun, dance music. It really doesn't take a whole lot to get me dancing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
I danced to gospel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
I danced to anything.
And what is your guilty food pleasure?
Oh, wow. Chips.
Oh.
I have to say chips, and more specifically, my son got me hooked on these hot fries, hot Cheetos. And sometimes my dinner at night is a glass of wine and hot Cheetos.
Well, the hot Cheetos are a little too much for me, but I will say, Cheetos,
yeah.
You can't beat them.
Can't beat it. Your
beat 'em.
fingers are like pink
yeah.
at the end.
But I'm with you on that one. I
Yeah.
love Cheetos.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just kind of plunge right in. You don't have any background in politics.
No.
It's been a long-time interest of yours.
Mm-hmm.
And so you decide to run not for city council, not for dog catcher, not for the school board.
Right.
You just go full on and say, I'm going to run for mayor in a city where I have not lived very long.
Yes. Yes. And the reason for that was that I knew my voice needed to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
I was, like you said, I was always into politics. I was a journalism major in college. And that I know it may sound weird to people, but it sort of gave me an introduction to politics in that I was into the print side of things. So I'd go out into rough areas in New Orleans and looking for stories. Much of the stories were feature stories, but I'd go out and look for stories, bring it back. You get all the angles when you're out there talking to people. You bring it back, you find the truth somewhere in there, and you deliver it to the people. So in doing that, it teaches you to think critically, to be investigatory, if you will. And that's what got my juices going. And later, towards the end of college, I discovered that actually my passion was politics. Okay. So I came here, and it really enraged me after the George Floyd murder, and I saw how many of our kids were dying, how many black boys. That really affected me because I have two of my own. And I thought, Nat, you can be a warrior on Facebook, and you can talk about this to your friends, or you can do something about it. Okay. You've raised two sons. You've been in leadership conditions. I'm just talking to myself. Why not go for it? You love politics, do it. And I put some fillers out. Friends here in Alexandria came to me and they said, hey, why don't you consider running for mayor? And I never thought local politics because I was, we were a military family. So I always thought more nationally. But as soon as they said it, it resonated with me because I'm such a people person. I like to get intimate with people. So I did some research and just looking at some very targeted things. It wasn't even a question for me. I felt that I had to do it.
Okay. Yeah. Now, I in some reading I was doing on you, it said that you reached out to friends in Congress, and that line kind of struck me. So were these staffers or were these members of Congress?
Members, friends of mine, people that I see on my plane, because flying back and forth, you see them I've seen Kamala Harris, I've seen, so you just run into people. And I just put that bug in their ear. They directed me to recruiters who could give me some advice. And it just so happened simultaneously, friends here in Alexandria approached me.
Okay.
And that just resonated with me because I felt if I go seeking Congress, it may require me to move. And I didn't want to move. This was home for me. So when they said consider running for mayor, it was perfect timing. It made sense, yeah.
And what kind of support have you gotten from the Republican Party? I kind of base this on the fact that I know that the machines, the Democratic and the Republican machines, have their own way of doing things, and they have their own ideas about who should run and who they should give money to. So I'm just curious. I mean, the Republican Party isn't the strongest party necessarily within the city of Alexandria. Right. So what kind of support have you gotten from them? Have they?
When I spoke with people here in Alexandria, they were enthusiastic.
Okay.
They told me to do my research, look at city council videos, get really caught up on the issues, know it inside out. And so I got that. But the party in many ways had because it's a very left-leaning city. Some say. I don't know. I have my suspicions, but it just, we had to quickly get our infrastructure together. The party did,
right?
Because you had other candidates coming along, and it's a really solid slate. And in terms of help, I've gotten tremendous help. Okay. Linda App was just here. She's kind of been my, I draft her. She and I may talk 15 times a day in text messaging. So I've gotten help from them in that way. Getting my literature out at the market. Sitting down with the chairman of the GOP, Pete Venavage. I don't know if you know him.
I do.
Yeah, and he and I have work lunches every now and again. But to their credit, they really don't get too involved in how I run my campaign. Those decisions, and they told me from the beginning. They said, Annetta, you reach out, get help outside, tap into areas where you can find people who will coalesce with you. And I did that. So I made those relationships with conservatives and certain groups, not all conservative groups, but I went to Loudoun County, Bull Run, Arlington, just making all those important relationships. And then towards the end, or towards the middle of this campaign, all those entities started to play a factor. Okay. But from the party at large, not a whole lot. And I get it. It's Alexandria, and sometimes they have to pick which candidate they think will push through. And so my friend said to me, he said, Annetta, don't concentrate on that. Because at first I was a little frustrated. And, because I was texting my friends and copy pasting my my website and asking for money. And, I mean, that's basics, though. You go through your iPhone and you ask your friends for money, for help. But he told me, he said, you just work your butt off. Work your butt off, because when people see how hard you're working, how badly you want it, how passionate you are, they'll come on, they'll attach, as they start to see you from afar. So I just did that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I just wanted to take just a minute. If you out there in our viewing audience have questions, please type those in on Facebook, and we will catch up with you a little bit later in the program. So we want everybody to have a chance to ask questions that they're interested in. The other thing that I was reading was that you wanted to be, you called it citizen-centric.
Yes.
How would you like us to understand that?
Well, part that came to me just from some of the policies that were pushed through here in the city, like Seminary Road. When I looked at that, how it progressed. 14. I'm pulling from the archives in my head here. 14 civic associations. Maybe less, all getting together and saying, don't do this, right? You know how that story went, and in the best interest of a special interest group, the citizens were shut out, and it was failed democracy, in my opinion. Heritage was another one, Heritage, oh wow, and now that we're progressing through this, the SROs, the open ACPS, so I just saw that people's voices weren't being heard. You know, I went on Facebook, I talked to people, went to the market. I've been at the market since March.
My husband said he actually met you there. So.
He did. I thought he was your husband, so he did. But I've been at the market since March. Like it's been almost 9 months, and I've been out there just, you know, and I'm not complaining because I knew I had to put in that work.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have those relationships built. People didn't know me. They didn't have folks that they could call up and say, "Hey, what do you know about Annetta? You went to high school with her. You went to college." You know, so I had to work, and you know, I'm better for it because I've talked to so many people, and the overarching complaint is that they're not being heard. That there are special interest groups that drown out their voices and their interests, and they're frustrated, and I get that. So, but I built my platform around that. Okay. I sat with my team and I said, okay, how can we, you know, deliver it back, restore a voice to the community, and then that is what I built my platform around. And it started with, you know, neighborhood representation. Okay. Yeah.
Now, and we'll come back to that in a minute or two. I really appreciate the idea of somebody being citizen centric and paying attention to what the citizens are saying. I'm a member of the Delray Civic Association. We just had a land use committee last night, and there were some things that we found out that just had not been passed along. At the same time, there's process, and there's process in understanding how the city works and how you get things done. So how do you anticipate balance coming in really cold and not knowing? You're coming into a city that has no city manager and it has no chief of police right now. So,
well, they have one. They're interim.
Right. They're interims.
Right.
But you're looking at big vacancies to fill.
Correct.
So some things aren't happening. So how do you come in and balance listening to the citizens, and at the same time you have got to put your running shoes on to understand how the city works?
Yeah. That's a solid question. That's a good question. So I will point you to this broken capillary in my eye. I am not
red
the devil.
Spot we've all been looking at.
I have hemorrhaging in my eyes, and I think it's just from 9 months of being in reading from sun up to sundown, and building a campaign, getting out here, meeting people, making all the right connections, being in the right places, letting people know that I care. But it's a lot of reading. It truly is. You've got to be a nerd to some degree.
Yep.
And I'm up for that. You know, but I don't come alone either. You know, I know people who have served in city council. I know Bill Cleveland, who was vice mayor. So I know people who have served and who are helping me in that area. So it will be a sharp learning curve for me. I've started the process already. But I saw your face, and you're right. You're right. I know where you're going with it. You don't know till you're in it.
Yeah.
And so I do have them to pull from, and like I said earlier, when you're a people person, like I don't have a problem talking to anyone. So if I need information, if I need questions asked, answered, I have no problem doing that. I have no problem calling in sessions to late night sessions, you know, to accelerate the process, and I have the time to do it.
So, have you retired from American Airlines?
No.
Or are you still flying?
I still fly. I fly a full. And on top of that, I fly a full schedule. I fly roughly about 80 hours a month, and I do that because, you know, I got to pay my bills, and I've used a lot of my money in my own campaign. You know, I've been my own in-kind. So, yeah, so I've flown a full schedule up to now, and I look at what I'm able to do only because I have that flexibility built in. If I'm elected, I also have the seniority, that same flexibility to scale back. So right now I'm working about 85 hours a month. But when that income comes in, I've done the math.
Okay.
So if I can scale back to the bare minimum of what my airline requires, which is like 40 hours, that's easy to crack. So yeah, I can do that.
It's a huge. I am just always amazed at the time commitment.
Yeah.
That it takes to be a public official.
Yeah, and
aside from a thick skin,
and I had to consider that when I decided to run for mayor. I was like, okay, financially, how can I do it? So I sat down, and sure, I can do it financially. That's not an issue. But I have to fly the 40 hours because that's a prerequisite and a requirement to keep my job. But 40 hours is nothing. And I mean 40 hours a month.
A month,
not a week.
Okay.
So I can do that because I realize that even though it's a part-time job,
it's a full-time part-time.
Yeah, it's a full-time part-time.
Yeah.
And the beauty of my job also is that when I'm on the road and I'm laying over, I've got nothing to do, but I'm in my hotel room. I go to the gym, I hit the gym, I grab something to eat, but rather than read a book now, I'll be reading regs, rules and regulations, zoning laws.
That's kind of a good place to segue.
Plans,
So, how the money that the city is getting through the recovery plan. I know that some of it has already been designated, but there's still a large amount of money to tackle some very big problems in the city. Certainly, the water issue, drainage, flooding is one. Wi-Fi accessibility is another.
Right.
Where do your interests lie in how that money is used?
Well, the ARPA funds, right? And I did a little bit of research on that when they first rolled it out, and it talked about hitting these equity points. And so with that in mind, I would look to put it towards increasing or helping bring new small businesses to the area, because we still need help in that area. Advertising for our city, bringing more people into it. I just saw an article where it said Alexandria was one of the top 3 places to live, something to that effect. But definitely trying to get more business into the city to take some of the burden off of the property, off of the homeowners here with high property taxes, that sort of thing. I would definitely place it there, and in our fixing our pipes. I think in the first round we put $6 million towards it. So this second round, I'd like to see more of it go towards that. I saw this morning where Governor Northam there's like 7.3 million. I'm just pulling this from my archives. 7.3 million.
I like your archives. I'm gonna have to remember that, because a lot of times my archives are shut tight, and I can't retrieve the things.
Right. Sometimes I get cross wires. But 7.3 million is what Governor Northam had to disperse, and I think we're getting like 117,000, something to that effect. Okay. But that's just a drop in the bucket.
Yep.
You know, I did the walkthrough with Katie, with Dre and Alex, and I'm nowhere near an expert on the topic, and I'm still scheduled to meet with a couple of people with Renew who are gonna kind of give me more insight on this and how the money could best be used to deal with this issue. But in the second tranche, to answer your question, I would use more of it towards flooding for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting signals that we've got some questions coming in. Is that true? My trusty people behind the scenes. Oh, good. We have some questions. Thank you. We have lots of people behind the scenes here. Okay, we've got 3.
Uh-oh.
Please ask about the incident at the high school this morning.
Oh. I got an alert that the Alexandria City High School. Oh, I love T.C. William. It takes such an effort to say Alexandria City Public School. But anyway, let me keep up with it. They were on lockdown. And unfortunately, my girlfriend called me. I was landing, and she was just beside herself because her daughter called her and said, "Mom, just come pick me up. I'm tired of this. You know, every day there's something." But they were on lockdown. From what I got on Twitter, there was someone outside of the school with a weapon. That person was arrested and the weapon was retrieved.
Okay.
Don't quote me on this, but I did get it from Twitter. It could be legit. Okay. It could not be. But yeah, that's the situation that we're in right now. You know, every day these parents, they don't know what to expect, and neither do their kids who are going to school.
Well, that's actually a follow-up question. How do you plan to address the violence?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, we've got to address the bigger issue here, and that is our SROs are out of the schools. Mm-hmm. Now, I know that some of this stuff was going on even when the SROs were there, but I think that they had that relationship with kids. We have no idea how many of these incidents they were probably able to mitigate.
Correct.
Simply because they had that community policing in place that we so desperately need. But yeah, I would get those SROs back. And if it is within my willpower to call an emergency session to revisit the budget, which the current mayor can do if he had 4 votes, I would do that. I would do that in the new session. But that's first and foremost. But then that goes to a bigger problem, because the problem is now that those SROs, and I've talked to some police officers about this, I don't think that half of the residents in Alexandria, and this is no offense to anyone, because I didn't realize it, and I went through the Citizens Academy class earlier this year. Now that those SROs are back into the system, they've been reabsorbed back into the system. They're on the streets.
The police force.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, they're on the streets.
Right.
The force just lost some people this month, or I should say last month, because now we're in October, but in September, and they're losing people. Mm-hmm. And they're having a hard time recruiting people. So this is going on around the country, of course, but also here in Alexandria. So the bigger issue is even if we return the SROs, what does that do to the coverage that we need out in the streets?
Right.
So we have got to invest in our first responders. Those SROs should be placed back into the schools, most definitely. But we are understaffed. We are greatly understaffed. Morale is low. The fact that there was no transition put in place once those SROs left, there was no real transition, no gradual pullout of them even, speaks to a broader issue, and that is that there really is no relationship between city council and the police. It's almost non-existent, and that is scary. And so that's how I intend to also deal with things, is reestablishing that relationship with the police, making sure that our kids have what they need in place, but also, some people say, well, Annetta, you should stay away from this, because you're not running for school board, you're running for mayor. But once that violence spills out into the community, it becomes the mayor and city council's business, because now it affects the economic development of our city, the economic stability, of our city. And it is their place. It's in their laps now. So what are you going to do? So it's not just about what's going on in the schools, because quite frankly, the schools, the way they're dealing with things, and I have a real objection to it, the schools have become the safest place to commit crimes. I mean, you can literally kick people in the head, pistol whip people, do all sorts of things inside the school walls, and because they have taken this pipeline to prison, go soft on crime, let's decriminalize certain activity, schools are the safest place to commit crimes. And then that, talk about unintended consequences. I don't understand. Let me pull myself together. I don't understand why people in the community, in my community, don't see this. Because when you go soft on crime and kids are allowed to commit criminal acts in school, what it does is it sends a message to the rest of the field that, oh, well, if I send my kids to where there's a high enrollment or an enrollment with minority kids, this is how they're going to deal with it. I'm not sending my kid there. And then that hurts all of our kids, because that's how we learn and grow from each other. The diversity is a beautiful thing, and so when you've got kids who are just being segregated because of violence, we're going back in time. And why? Because of bad policies that are for I don't know if it's intended or well-intended or not, but those policies going soft on crime is hurting the Black community, and it's hurting our society as a whole.
So I was going to come back around to that. Yeah. When you said my community, you were talking about the African American.
Yes, African American.
Okay. Another question here is handle the issues with Dominion Energy. And I'm not quite sure what they're referring to.
Maybe they're talking about the Delray debacle.
Right. I mean, transformers go out.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's
right. Right. I don't know.
I don't know that.
Can I revisit that topic? Because I sometimes I can be heavy-handed and not address the other side with the kids. Let me revisit it for a minute. In terms of the kids, right? You're protecting the innocence of those who are just there to learn. How do you deal with the ones who are troubled, right? I don't necessarily have a solution for that. What I do know is that those kids, I believe that they have experienced trauma. I don't really like to use that phrase. But I grew up with seeing some of the same things that these kids are dealing with. I dealt with it as a teenager myself. So I understand that hurt people hurt people. And our kids need, talking about all our kids, those that are out here committing these acts, they do need help. They need help. But first and foremost, the place of government at its core is to protect the innocent, and they cannot be in those schools allowed to terrorize and bully other kids. But what we do, I think that's going to take a community effort. Just this Sunday, I visited a church, Archbishop Presbyterian Church, and right across the street from the firehouse. And I was speaking to the pastor there, and I said to him, I would like to pull together faith-based organizations, churches, to address the needs of our youth. I know that when I was when I lived in Stafford, I went to this really good community outreach church. It was First Mount Zion in Woodbridge. In fact, the pastor is like a politician, Pastor Torian. But I loved him. He was such an activist. But that church had such good outreach. They had a tutoring program. They took the kids on field trips. But here's the deal. Like, you had some skin in the game. You couldn't just show up.
Yeah.
You had to produce your grades. You had to show that you were giving back in the community. And if you were doing those things, and so it was a give and take. And so that's the kind of community that I would like to build for kids, and hopefully reach those kids who would otherwise, who just, they need some place to go. They need something to do that's productive, and so, but to some degree, we've got to change the culture as well. It is a cultural issue as well. But to answer what I would do for those kids, or just for our kids in general, that's where I'm headed with that. To use what we have in this city to really cater to the needs of our youth, because we've got it. It's built in here. Even if I have to pull from outside, those organizations are out there. The Douglas Leadership Institute, the Woodson Project in D.C., they've got all sorts of programs. My son was involved with, he trained at 4-Star Tennis Academy, but he was under the mentorship of leaders in D.C. With MTEG. It was called Metropolitan Tennis Education Group. Amazing organization. But they do the same thing. They bring those kids in after school. There's a tutoring program. They teach basic tennis. You've got to produce, though. And every year, in order for my son to participate and go to the U.S. Open on bus trips and field trips, like, you had to produce your grades. They required a certain GPA, and they required that you give back in the community. So he was teaching young kids, even when he was just, 10 years old, was just, pulling someone up.
Pulling someone up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Oh, good. We have some more. And then we're going to wrap up here. But, okay. Is man-made climate change contributing to Alexandria's flooding?
Partly, because we're getting more storms.
Yeah.
So yeah, that comes from the climate for sure.
Yeah, it's not just pipes.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
yeah.
Or density.
Exactly.
Some of it is just density.
It is, but
and, I mean, there are places in Rosemont, that starting in 2015, they had clogged drains, and it pursued up until the major floods leading into 2020, and that caused a lot of the flooding. But some of it is density. People in Potomac area will tell you it's density created. But I do believe in climate change. I do believe that.
Yeah,
for sure.
I think you. Yeah. I mean, it's there.
Yeah,
it's
for sure.
It's there. We spent a week out in Montana and in Glacier National Park. And, when the park was founded, there were 20-some glaciers. They're down to 7 now.
Oh, wow.
And it's climate change.
Yeah.
And
I better go and see it before
you better
it's all
go and
gone.
see it. But trust me, they move very slowly.
Yeah.
They dissipate very slowly.
Right,
but still, it's just thinking about it in those terms that,
having that tangible proof.
Having the tangible proof that it was there. And because the glaciers are so isolated that there is literally nothing else that could make them disappear,
right?
Except climate change.
Except that, correct.
And you see something like that, and I think you really understand that it's a much broader problem than we think of, within our own city.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, you know what? It's just been delightful having you here tonight.
Yeah,
I'm glad that you decided to come talk to us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And as we're wrapping up here, I'd like to give you an opportunity to just, if you want to speak to our audience and tell them why they should vote for you. Okay.
Thank you all. This is like my first TV interview.
It is.
So I thank you all for chiming in this evening. I hope that I said something today that would trigger you to go and vote for me. I think that there's no coincidence that God has sent or put it in my heart to run for mayor. I call myself an aviation first responder because that's what I am. At a time when this city needs someone who understands what it means to be a first responder, someone who has the practical experience to relate to our police officers and know what their job entails. So I hope that you will give me this opportunity to serve as your mayor. I will be hitting the trails. I will be constantly at the markets until November 2nd. And we do have a mayoral debate scheduled for October 19th. And I will be tweeting that. So I'm pretty sure it's October 19th. And I'd love to see your face if you can get to the markets, or if you want to sponsor meet and greet or have me in your neighborhood. Please reach out to my campaign. And thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, and thank you to our viewing audience. Thank you to David and Grace, who are behind the scenes but have just done a wonderful job tonight. And as always, a big thank you to Mary Wadlin of the Zebra Newspapers, who made this all possible. And until next time, this is Virginia Amos saying good night and thank you for being with us.